Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today.
You know, Billy, forest health is something that every woodland owner needs to know about.
It's the foundation, right? If
Mhm.
our woods are not healthy, then any practices that we try to do in them are going to be compromised or not as effective.
Right.
Starting with some healthy woodlands is a great place to get going. And really excited about today's guest. We've got Alexandra Blevins,
Mhm.
forest health specialist at the Kentucky Division of Forestry, and she's going to be talking about some of the work that they do and how they can assist landowners as it relates to woodland health. And it's really important since most of our woodlands here in Kentucky are privately owned by
Right.
farmers and families. So helping them take care of the woods is an important thing. And then we also have Dr. Ellen Crocker with us with another edition of her Pesky Plants. And this one is a kind of pretty pesky, and it can be a little challenging to deal with. But fortunately, we got Dr. Crocker on this, and she's going to be sharing some knowledge on that. But really excited to have both these guests. As I said, forest health is the starting point for managing our woods in a lot of ways. So really glad to have them on here. If you've got questions for either Alexandra or Dr. Crocker, please use the chat function. And if you're a YouTube or podcast listener, thank you very much. But we can interact with you via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu. But Renee, glad to be with you on this beautiful day here in Lexington.
Definitely. So let's go ahead and get started. So Alexandra, if you want to turn your camera on. Welcome to the show. I know we've had you on a couple of times, and we always look forward to your presentations.
I will admit it has been a little overdue, but I'm back.
No, we're glad to have you.
Thank you both so much for the invite.
Oh, well, we really appreciate all the great work you do. And I know you and Dr. Crocker work together all the time on stuff. And we're really lucky to have both you all in the state really paying attention to the health of our forest. So thank you for that. And thanks for being with us again.
Yeah, I know we scheduled a meeting with Kentucky Division of Forestry, and I was like, it probably is a good thing to have you on just to talk about what KDF can do to help landowners with forest health. So I thought, let's get Alexandra back on here and back on the show to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm happy to do so. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay.
Gotcha.
Looks good.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, let's talk about some forest health, you all, and how the Kentucky Division of Forestry can help landowners like yourself to figure out, what might be going on. Maybe it's a pesky plant or a, notorious forest pest that you might have invading your woodlands, or it could be something maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, such as straight line wind damage. Really, our forests are under attack from not only insects and plants and diseases, but other things in the abiotic realm. And so with our forest health program, we have to cover all of that. So wearing many different hats, on a day-to-day basis. And so while it can be a lot, that is what we're here for. And not only to serve on our state lands and federal lands and keep those forests healthy, but as Billy mentioned, he must have seen some of my slides. A vast majority of the forested acres here in Kentucky are in private hands. And so we deal a lot with folks like yourself. And so just to give you a bit of my background, a lot of you folks may know me. I've been around the division for quite some time now, going on 8 years. And so I got started as a very grunt worker level, hiking up and down the hills of eastern Kentucky, treating our precious eastern hemlock trees for the hemlock woolly adelgid. Did that for a couple seasons and bumped into the forest health specialist position and did all the bugs and crud across all 120 counties in this wonderful Commonwealth. And now I'm currently in the position of the program coordinator. And so while I don't get out in the field as much as I used to, I stay on top of what our new folks are seeing out in the field and try to make our program as big and bad as it can be and keep us going well into the future. And with that, oh, there we go. So what exactly is KDF here for? So what is our mission? And so really the meat of what KDF is here for is to protect, conserve, and enhance the forest resources of the Commonwealth. And so that's our overarching mission within the division. In our forest health program, we really hone in on, first of all, identifying the threats to our forested land here in Kentucky, and then subsequently monitoring for things like potential insects, invasive plants, diseases, and all of those other things that we're now dealing with, such as accelerated disturbances across our landscape. And so, that is priority number one when it comes to the KDF Forest Health Program. And as Billy alluded to, we have a vast amount of forested land on our landscape here in Kentucky with over 12 million acres. And while, the majority of that is in the eastern 1/3 of our state within the Cumberland Plateau and northward, with our national forest land, that really only makes up a small portion. The remainder, about 80%, is in private hands. So, as Billy mentioned, those families and woodland owners all across our state that have, play an integral part in forest health. That hodgepodge mix outside of the Daniel Boone, that is a large part of our work. And so we do acknowledge that. And so what exactly does this mean for forest health? Hopefully I haven't frozen up. Okay. And so we are really meeting folks where they're at. So at their properties, walking their sites with them, and really taking a firsthand look at what their woodlands are looking like and how can we better them. So what does our program actually do? A large part of what we do, like it said in our mission statement, is the identification and then the subsequent monitoring of these various threats to our forests. And so as you'll see, I started off with that. So we put in a lot of miles all across the state, whether that's on the ground through drive-by surveys or getting up in a plane and doing some aerial detection work. And what exactly are we out there looking for? Well, like I mentioned, we wear many, many hats. So it could be EAB or emerald ash borer surveys out in Western Kentucky, or it could be other forest pests. And it's good to know that while we have an army of invasive insects, we also have native insects that can cause damage, maybe not on the same scale as these invasive insects, but they do have these cyclical outbreaks, and we keep records of those. So things like maybe if you live up in Moorhead, you may have noticed the yellow poplar weevil impacting the foliage of our tulip poplar trees. And then we also have to keep up with this army of pesky plants or invasive plants that are invading our landscape every day. For instance, in central Kentucky, we deal a lot with bush honeysuckle removal. But maybe if you are living out in eastern Kentucky, your dominant invasive could be something like kudzu. And believe me, there is an army of many, many more. And then we also have to know about these lethal pathogens that are impacting our trees. And we do have quite a few. Most recently, we have things such as laurel wilt that are impacting our sassafras and spicebush populations. And then even more recent still, we have things like brown spot needle blight, which are impacting not only loblolly in the western portion of the state, but also our eastern white pines. And so if you happen to notice some kind of shabby looking white pines, please give me a call, because we're trying to add new county detections to the map to try to understand that blight better. And so as I mentioned, this is an image that we took from an aerial survey. So get to see the state from a different perspective when we get up in these tiny little Cessna planes and put in the miles up in the air. And then another neat thing in the monitoring side, we put out specifically lured traps for many different types of insect vectors. It could be the red bay ambrosia beetle, which spreads laurel wilt, or it could be the walnut twig beetle, which is the primary vector for thousand cankers disease. And what we do is we will set up these traps that are lured for those specific insects all across the state. And then we will periodically check these and then do the processing of everything that gets in that cup there at the bottom. And we can, decipher, have we found this insect? Or, are we still waiting to make that detection? Because as we all know, it's only a matter of time when we talk about these invasions. And so another large portion of our program comes in, of course, we've identified these issues. Now, what in the heck are we going to do with them? So the management side as well as the treatment. And so Kentucky, unfortunately, we have a lot of heavy hitters when it comes to damage to our forests. And so one that we've been working with for probably the longest period of time is the hemlock woolly adelgid. And so this is a invasive forest pest that we have been working with since 2011. We've had our HWA treatment crew that's been going strong since then. And so since 2011, we've had a 3 to 4 person crew that works 9 months out of the year to treat hemlock trees for protection against HWA. And to date, we have treated about 250,000 trees. So that's pretty awesome. I love to brag on these folks because, as I mentioned, this is how I got started with KDF, and it is some pretty grueling work. And so I love recognizing them. And, I mentioned the Daniel Boone National Forest as well as our state forest lands. We also work across the fish and wildlife management areas, as well as the Office of Kentucky nature preserves all across the state. And we're trying to ever expand this work across new boundaries when it comes to state managements. And so if you are interested or want to pick our brains about maybe a location that you know of that may not have been treated, please let us know. And then something that we're really starting to hit hard more recently is invasive plant projects or invasive plant removal. And so two really innovative ideas that have come about through this work are the creation of the invasive plant strike team, and this is in collaboration with Dr. Ellen Crocker and her students at UK. And then also we are working to develop the first ever Kentucky-led CISMA, or Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area. And so we are calling it very fondly ICK. So those pesky, icky plants, that's where we're going to be dealing with those and working with municipalities across, hopefully one day we can say the whole state, but we're starting very locally within the Louisville area. And then another really interesting facet in regards to biological control, this is where we can use a beneficial insect or other organism to combat the bad or organisms such as the emerald ash borer. And so for this example, we have recently been collaborating with the USDA rearing facility out of Brighton, Michigan, to get several species of these parasitoid wasps. And so they'll ship live bugs to us, which is pretty interesting. You don't get to say that every day. And then we have selected sites here in the state that have been approved for these releases. And so we'll get a box of bugs in the mail, and then I have to hurry out to the sites for these releases. So this, we had our initial successful year, and so we're going in for our second round of releases. And where we started out with the one egg parasitoid, we now have that as well as 2 additional larval parasitoids that we're releasing. So we're really ramping up in that regard for biocontrol. And this was really established on the success of our HWA predatory beetle releases. And so while we have the chemical treatments that go on all the time, this additional integrated pest management approach using our little Laricobius or Larry beetles, we're seeing success in establishment of those species. And so you can think of these as like our little helpers to keep the bad bugs at bay. And then some additional photos here from the field. So this is our soil drench technique. It's our tried and true technique for hemlock treatments across those different land types that you see listed there. And we're hoping to expand onto private land treatments in collaboration with the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, but we're still working to develop that. So hopefully more to come on that one day. And here you can see some of our invasive plant special projects. This is taken at Big Bone Lick, where if you ever get the chance, I encourage you to go walk to see the bison. So that initial trail, our crews over the past several years have worked to clear out the bush honeysuckle and keep it cleared, which is quite the undertaking. And so please, not only go and see the bison, but also see the wonderful work that our crews have done. And then we have, this is the yellow pan trapping that we do to look for those established parasitoids. And so, not only do we do monitoring trapping, but then we also check for these other beneficial insects that we have had a part in hopefully helping to establish. And so this is how we can go back and check up and make sure that they're happy, healthy, and dispersing. All right. And then, we also do a lot of training, outreach, and education. And we all know, Renee and Billy know this very, very well. As so does Dr. Ellen Crocker. Education is one of our most important assets when it comes to forest health. We can do all the treatment work and write up management plans and do all this work, but it might not always be advertised, but we really, I'm always thinking of new ways that we can spread the word and get more folks involved with forest health in Kentucky. And so I think a lot of us, actually probably everyone that's a panelist on this From the Woods Today episode, has been involved with our Kentucky Forest Health Conference. So, over the past several years, we've had over 275 folks in person for this conference, which just blows my mind. It never fails. And we want more people to come to these events. And it's really just a one-stop shop. Any and everyone is invited to come and learn about what's going on in Kentucky in regard to forest health, as well as some surrounding states, because that's a lot of what we do as well, is learning from each other. And then another really special event that we try to do at least a couple of these every year, they come in the form of these Hemlock Volunteer Days, and that's where we invite the public to come out and do some of that blood, sweat, and tears work with us when it comes to hemlock treatments. And so all ages, we've worked with Boy Scout troops. We have had some folks, actually one of our star volunteers, I believe she's up in her 70s. And so, we work with all ages, all different kinds of folks, and we welcome more. So if you want to come out and see what really happens to treat these hemlock trees, we'd love for you to join us. So check our Facebook page for when we have our next event. And then, of course, getting called upon for things such as this, as well as guest lectures at our various state universities. Um, this is where I am really trying to do better about educating our next generation and really intriguing them and hooking them in to forest health and hopefully recruiting the next me. And I love this photo. So here's a packed house at the Longship Fellows Club, where we have hosted our Forest Health Conference for the past several years, and we're looking to break out and hopefully do this bigger and better conference at a new venue in the coming years. So please be on the lookout for information regarding that. And then, we do a ton of different kinds of outreach, more and more outreach. We have a cabinet internship program, which these three folks have all are from UK Forestry, I believe, and they have since graduated. And so we'll bring a lot of students in to the cabinet through various divisions, but Forest Health, I try to take at least a couple on every year. And then this is Kenna at our Pine Mountain Settlement School out in Eastern Kentucky, trying to wrangle 85 or fifth graders to do a volunteer hemlock event with them. So there she's teaching them all about HWA and why we need to keep it at bay. And then, of course, we host the insect and disease quiz for the high schoolers at the Wood Expo at Masterson Station Park every single year. And so here you can see these highly focused high schoolers taking that exam. And then this last image here is at Robinson Forest and taking some natural resources students who may not have ever, had the experience of getting out into the hills of Eastern Kentucky. And so we're doing a demonstration on how we treat the hemlocks for HWA. So now, what can we actually do for you all? So this, everything that I've talked about, we can do most of all of that for you all. So all it takes is a phone call, an email, a text, that initial correspondence, and we will take it from there. And so a lot of what we do for private citizens is in the form of expert technical assistance. And so a lot of the times it will start with that sick tree call. So it's a landowner. Oh gosh, I have this tree here, and over the past couple years, it's been losing more and more leaves, and I think it's dead. We'll get a lot of calls like that. Or it could be, oh my gosh, my tree has gone brown overnight. What do I do? Can you save it? And so you can just imagine the mix of calls that we get, but we take every call seriously. And not only is this a service that I take pleasure in providing to the Commonwealth, but I also look at this as a way to better our program as well, because we might not be seeing everything. I mean, we're working out of Frankfort, out of our headquarters office, and there's a lot of land out there in Kentucky, and we don't see it every day. So these calls are very important to us, and we get information from landowners. So it works both ways, folks. And so it all starts with that call or an email. And then, we will work with the landowners to assess, maybe send us some additional photos off the bat, or just through orally kind of working through what you're seeing, the signs and symptoms. And then most likely it's going to be followed up with a in-person site visit. And this is where we'll actually come out and meet you where you are. So like I said, Forest Health, it equals meeting folks where they are. And so we do a lot of site visits throughout the year. And as you can imagine, like right now is kind of our peak season for these types of things. But I've definitely been on site visits in the middle of January as well. So don't let that hold you back. We work it through all the seasons and all the weather conditions. And so, yeah, just let us know what you're seeing. We will listen with open ears and open eyes. Once we get out there to the site visit, we'll see, the issues firsthand, walk the property with you. And typically what happens is, say, for instance, a landowner calls about a single tree, which is wonderful. We deal with single trees. We can deal with whole woodlands. But what most typically happens is we'll get a call about a single tree, and then we show up, and I think the landowners are just so elated that we're there that they will take us and we'll inspect every single tree on their property. And let me tell you, that is an excellent training technique for myself as well as some of my other staff. And I can tell you this is one of my favorite aspects of the job, just hearing people's stories and their passion for their trees. And I think, it really shows when we get out and do these site visits, how much people care. And I just love that. And so typically when we'll go out on a site visit, we may look at your trees and say, oh, we know exactly what that is. You've just got some cosmetic feeding damage from the yellow belly sapsucker. When you see those straight lines of holes in your tree, that's probably what that is. And most of the time that's harmless, but we could be dealing with something else. And so that's where we can take samples for landowners and get them where they need to be. And while landowners can do this themselves, a lot of times people just don't know about it. And so we can assist in helping to be able to determine what exactly is going on with that tree or many trees. And so on the left, you can see some images from past site visits. So that top sequence there, I was in Glasgow, Kentucky, and working with the gentleman and his two lovely daughters that you can see in the images here. And believe me, they were some expert sample takers. So here you can see them helping me collect some foliar tissue from what looks like to be some potential herbicide injury to landscape trees. And then we also love collaborating because if you've heard from me before, you've probably heard me say, I'm definitely not the smartest person, but I know who those smart people are. And so in that bottom image there, you can see I went on a site visit with our soil scientist friends at NRCS, or the Natural Resources Conservation Service, to look at a black walnut plantation. I can't remember exactly where that was, but what the landowner was seeing was that some of the walnuts weren't performing as well as others. And so we were trying to investigate why that might be. And what do you know? It was related to the soil and some hard horizons within. And then, of course, another site visit when we first found laurel wilt back in 2019. My supervisor and I went out to Fort Campbell Army Base and checked out a lot of sassafras trees and pulled a lot of samples. So there you can see the tree and some associated samples that we take in for testing at the diagnostic lab. And so we're happy to deal with those head scratchers and do our best to provide wonderful services such as these. And so, I keep talking, we have a program and, there's other people. Who are they? So who are you going to call? So, I've been around for quite some time. And so unfortunately, I spend a lot of my time behind the computer screen. But these folks are our next, up and comings within the Forest Health Program in KDF. And so Kenneth Smith, she took over my position as the forest health specialist. And so she is getting up to speed with site visits of all different kinds. She runs several of our trapping programs and does a lot of survey work as well. Barbara Karsnich, she is our invasive species coordinator. She came to us from Pennsylvania and working with the spotted lanternfly. So that's one of those new one, folks. And so we have an expert from Pennsylvania that was there dealing with it at the initial discovery. And so we're very happy to have her on our team. And then we have Adam Taylor, who is our invasive plant coordinator. And so I mentioned the invasive plant strike team as well as IC. So he is our state champion when it comes to those two efforts. And then we also have our HWA crew lead. This is Becca Johnson. So she got started on the crew as one of just the crew members. And now she is working on her 3rd season of leading our hemlock crew. So we're very happy to have her in a new position and forging the way for our precious hemlocks in the state. All right. So, that is a very 10,000 foot view of what our forest health program is within the Kentucky Division of Forestry and how we can assist you. But I would be remiss if I left it at that because, forest health is really integrated into every aspect of our forests and our various programs that we run out of our KDF headquarters office. And so I don't like to think about forest health as being, its own thing. We are strongly linked to our stewardship, wildland fire, urban and community forestry, and our state nurseries programs. So while, it may be someone else that you're dealing with outside of our program, it's still going to have a forest health component in there. So for instance, stewardship plans with private landowners, maybe for instance, you are managing for a specific invasive plant. Or, if you're trying to improve your timber stand, you probably want to, consider forest health in that as well. And of course, wildland fire. We can use fire in our toolbox to make healthier forests, but then also how that human wildland interface. How do we keep not only the trees healthy and safe, but also the folks as well? And so our fire side of the house, they do a lot of wonderful work with communities in these high prone fire environments. And then of course, urban and community, the trees where we work and play, those trees are very, very important too. And even if you live in Louisville or Lexington, we will come look at your trees too. So don't feel excluded. All 120 counties, everybody give us a call. We welcome those calls. And then, getting those trees back out on the landscape. So our nursery grows a myriad of native plants, native tree species to Kentucky, and we have lots of different programs in trying to get those trees back out on the landscape, such as these free giveaways. So, like I mentioned before, keep an eye on our KDF Facebook page and look for these events where you can get involved. And so, I'm out of our headquarters office in Frankfort, but we do have 6 field offices all across the state with amazing foresters and rangers that are there to help you and meet you where you're at. So with that, I'll open it up maybe for some questions or to segue into Ellen's talk. And my information, if you'd like to reach out, is right there. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties.
No, it's totally fine. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we loved it. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, there was a quick question about is there a charge for forest health folks coming out? If the landowner calls you all and needs you to come out?
That is a very important question. So it is a free service. Everything that I mentioned is a free service. And so, please, please, please don't let that be a hindrance. I should have had that in big, bold letters and grow and expand on the page. But yes, this is all free technical assistance to the public. So please, we encourage you to reach out.
Yeah, so I guess if they're seeing something new to them, it may be new to the area as well. So you all getting out there can really help us get ahead of things if you all know what's going on. So
exactly.
So yeah, if you see something, say something, right? And it applies to your woodlands as well, especially something maybe different than you've seen in the past. So for sure.
Exactly.
We just got another question that says, are there any tools, checklists, etc. available to the public for like site surveys?
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Well, so it's kind of a hyper-focused project for the Tornado Relief Strike Team. I believe you have talked about this recently on the program. And so we have a Survey 123 application that we can use for those folks that are impacted by the tornadoes in Western and Central Kentucky. And then Ellen reminded me the Healthy Woods app. This is one that I should use more often, but Ellen, maybe you want to come on and talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we do have a new app called Healthy Woods that you can download for free to your phone. Myself and colleagues across the Eastern US, but especially at the University of Tennessee, developed it to kind of be a first photo-based walkthrough for woodland owners to kind of assess the health of their woods. So it asks a series of questions, assuming that, you don't have a lot of technical training in forestry, but to get a sense of how things are going from a health perspective in your stand. And I think that that could be a helpful tool for a lot of different folks. While it's intended for somebody who's just beginning to think about some of those things, it will create a report that summarizes that information that then you can share with others or keep for your own records.
Oh, okay. Sounds
Excellent.
like a very useful app. Everyone should download it, sounds
I
like.
hope it is.
Yes.
Test it out and let me know what you think.
Awesome.
It's free and nobody's going to use your data from it. It's just kind of other extension folks and outreach people.
All right,
Yeah,
wonderful.
so take advantage of that opportunity, folks. Healthy Woods app should be available at your favorite download location.
Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, it was awesome. We greatly appreciate you being on and letting us know all about these different forest health things. I know Dr. Crocker now is going to talk about a pesky plant. I don't know, are you going to have Alexandra on with you? I can't remember what
Don't
she
go
said.
anywhere, Alexandra,
Okay.
because
here.
as usual, you are knowledgeable about many different things, and I bet you're going to have a lot about this particular pesky plant too.
They tag team a lot. So Dr. Crocker is here to talk about the next edition of our Pesky Plants. So we greatly appreciate her being on, and you can go ahead and take it away.
Great. Well, as Alexandra mentioned, Kentucky Division of Forestry does a lot with forest health, and it's always awesome to get to partner with her and others at KDF. So thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for all you do out there. So I know you mentioned invasive plants, right? And if you were to pick, the top invasives for forestry in Kentucky, I bet this one would be on the list. Does this look familiar to you, Alexandra?
It does indeed, unfortunately.
So what are we seeing here?
Oh, goodness. The stinky tree.
The stinky tree is stinking. I've heard, like stinking sumac, it's called. Or what are some other good names? Have you heard of any?
I just refer to it as the stinky tree,
The stinky
unfortunately.
tree. It's not, even though people call it the stinky tree, stinking sumac, it's actually totally different. You might hear it referred to as Alanthus or tree of heaven, but obviously it is not a heavenly tree. And we don't like what it's doing. Whoever called it tree of heaven to begin with did not realize the problems it was going to cause long term, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit about Tree of Heaven. It is a fast-growing tree that produces lots of wind-borne seeds that will let it take over really quickly. So an interesting thing about this tree is that while Alexandra and I might be thinking about it in this forest setting, it's very, very common in urban areas as well. Roadsides, any kind of disturbed highlight setting, you can find Tree of Heaven. So today we're going to talk about Tree of Heaven, what it's doing, why it's a problem, and how you can control it. So here's a photo of what Tree of Heaven might look like in a dense thicket in a woodland setting. And the problem that it causes is that it is growing really fast it is colonizing rapidly, and it is outcompeting other plant species that you want to see, especially on poor quality sites where maybe other things are struggling to grow, and this thing can get there quickly, can grow fast, and can take over. Because it grows so thickly and can become this dominant canopy species, because this is a tree, you know, it will grow very large. It can exclude native species in your woods, which for us, if this is following a major disturbance, let's say you just had a harvest in there or something else, a tornado or some windstorm that came through that caused a lot of damage, disturbance, open light, if that tree of heaven is there and its seeds are there, it can really take over. And in addition to that, its roots actually exude chemicals that assist them in pushing out those native species and inhibiting their growth. It produces tons and tons of seeds, which makes it easy for it to travel on the wind to new sites and invade quickly. So something you want to be on the lookout for, especially following disturbance. So it is very widespread here in the United States, and it can tolerate a wide range of conditions. It can thrive in poor soils, but it can also establish on edges, you know, the edge of your woods, roadsides, disturbed areas. Here you can see it in a classic, I've seen it growing this way in a number of places, right along the side of the road. This is Tree of Heaven. Right here, just you can see it, kind of a little bit more of it growing through there, but just on that edge and can move in from there. In Kentucky's woods, I think it's the biggest threat immediately following the harvest, when its arrival can prevent regeneration that you want to be seeing, taking over and being really successful. If instead you've got a lot of Tree of Heaven clogging things up, that can be a big problem. In addition, it is very common in urban and suburban areas, lining railroad tracks, popping up all over. Here we can see it, you know, just it looks like it's growing out of a building. This is in front of a house in my neighborhood where it's just growing right out of the foundation there on somebody's front porch. So while it prefers these full sun areas, it can also invade into more shaded areas. So a little bit more on its ID. What are you looking for with Tree of Heaven? So it can grow into a very large tree, reaching 80 feet or taller. So here you can see an example of that, a big tree version. But while individual trees can grow really tall and large in diameter, it's much more common to see it growing in dense thickets of smaller trees. So these clonally connected, so they all are connected through their root system, and it makes just this wall, this dense thicket of Tree of Heaven. And Tree of Heaven has compound, pinnately compound leaves. So here you can see everything that I'm going to show right here. This is one leaf that's made up of lots of little leaflets. Do you see all of these leaflets? And one leaf could have 10 to 25 leaflets attached. And here's where that leaf attached. And here's another leaf with lots of leaflets on it. Those leaflets have smooth edges. So the margins are smooth on those, and the leaves, you know, made up of those leaflets can be really large. So here's a picture of me looking at it from the top. This is one leaflet, and you can see in this one, it looks much more reddish. So when those leaves are first emerging in the spring, they have this reddish green color, and then they'll turn more of that dark green on the upper surface and a light green on the underside of those leaflets. Another distinctive feature is that while these leaflets have a smooth edge, they have little lobes at the base, one, or in this case, maybe two small lobes at the base of each leaflet, and a little hard, small bump on the underside, if you were to look at that. So here's those leaflets and those little glandular dots, those lobes on the underside of those leaflets. Another thing that Alexandra alluded to earlier that I find very distinctive in Tree of Heaven identification is if I were to smell my hand now after I touched this leaf, what I would find is that it is stinky. even touching those leaves is going to be a little bit stinky. But certainly if I crush it, if I break that branch, if I do something like that and smell it, it's going to be very, very distinctive, very distinctively bad smelling. And that's going to be helpful in your identification. So on a really big tree, the bark gets this smooth texture and gray color. But when they're younger, those shoots might be bright green. And then they kind of mature to more of this grayish color. You'll see these white dots on them, white lenticels all over. And then on an individual shoot, you might see these leaf scars right here where there was a leaf that was attached. It has this really distinctive triangular shape on them as well that can be helpful in your ID. Another thing that's really helpful in identifying tree of heaven, especially in the summertime, is that it produces these clusters of yellow to pink to green seeds. So these start out as little green flowers that aren't very noticeable. You probably wouldn't even notice them. But then once those mature into seeds, you can see just how distinctive those are. So they will really stick out. I mean, the pink color almost makes them look like flowers. So those seeds are eye-catching. And especially, you know, on the top of the tree, if you were to look at them from overhead aerially with a drone or something, they might stick out in the summertime. So over time, though, these are going to change in color to more of a grayish brown color. So here's a tree of heaven in the wintertime. So you can see where those seeds were attached. You can see how they were kind of connected there. And you can also see the remnants of these little seed pods. Can you see that right there? And then up close, this is what it might look like. So that same little seed in this very thin papery sheath, imagine the wind taking that and spreading it super easily so they can ride the wind long distances with those seeds. So, and that can be helpful in your identification, but is also part of why they're so problematic. So as if everything we haven't told you about Tree of Heaven wasn't enough, there's one more reason why we don't want Tree of Heaven here. And last week I was traveling and I was out of town and I got to see some of this. So here is a Tree of Heaven. We can see a little something that's scurrying around on that Tree of Heaven. What's that right there, Alexandra?
The dreaded spotted lanternfly.
The dreaded spotted lanternfly. This is a nymph of the spotted lanternfly, an invasive insect that's a new arrival to Kentucky. So we do have it in some areas and not in others. And Tree of Heaven is its favorite host plant. So they are from the same native range in Asia, and it will be really attracted to Tree of Heaven, feed on Tree of Heaven, especially in its younger life stages. But unfortunately, it does not stay put on Tree of Heaven, and it will spread into other plants that we care about. If it just stayed on Tree of Heaven, we would be happy for that. We don't like Tree of Heaven, but unfortunately, it will spread and feed on other plants, which could be a problem for them, and also a nuisance for us because it covers them with their sticky honeydew that gets covered with mold. And it is just going to be a real pain for us. And in this video, you can see that little nymph scurrying around, and then another plant that I saw next to it is covered with lots of those Tree of Heaven nymphs, as well as a mature, not Tree of Heaven nymphs, spotted lanternfly nymphs on Tree of Heaven, and a mature spotted lanternfly here. And this is Tree of Heaven, but it's also covered with other invasives. We've got Japanese honeysuckle, we've got morning glory, we've got all sorts of things over here. And the concern with spotted lanternfly is what happens when it spreads from Tree of Heaven to other things. So while getting rid of your Tree of Heaven might not stop spotted lanternfly, there has been some work to suggest that if you can manage your Tree of Heaven populations, maybe your spotted lanternfly won't be as bad as it could have been. So just another reason why we don't want Tree of Heaven. And one thing that I also hear is, how can you tell tree of heaven from some potential lookalikes? So it does look like some of our native species. So some things to keep an eye out for are sumac and walnut that might be mixed up with tree of heaven, just because both of them have compound leaves that have lots of leaflets as well. Sumac can also grow in these dense clonal thickets, so you can see how you could confuse them. But they have slightly different leaves. So you can see here on the walnut, this is walnut, and it has kind of little teeth on the margins instead of the totally smooth tree of heaven. Neither of these have that lobe at the base. They have different flowers, different fruits. Those big walnut nuts, totally different bark and twigs. But when in doubt, the scent of tree of heaven is quite distinctive and different from either of these. So I like to use that as well. So, from a management perspective, sustainable woodland management of Tree of Heaven is going to require scouting for trees on or around your property, killing those mature trees that are producing seed to reduce that seed and reduce that spread, killing small trees to prevent them from establishing and competing with the desirable native trees that you want to see. So in most woods, tree of heaven is going to occur scattered on the edges or in small groups. And because it produces root suckers, so a really big root system underground that you can't see, that's going to connect tree to tree and they're going to send up new shoots. If you simply cut them down or just pull up one that's connected to this bigger root system, it's not going to be effective. Because of this, systemic herbicides are typically needed to ensure complete control of tree of heaven, especially once it's out of that seedling phase. If it's just a small seedling that you can pull up, that's one thing. But a lot of times, once they get big enough, that's really not going to get the root system of the tree. So this is an illustration from a great video from Penn State. They've got some phenomenal resources on Tree of Heaven that I'll put a link to and encourage you to check out as well. But you might see this one tree, but what you don't see below ground is how it's connected to other trees and other shoots. So if you were to cut down that one tree, still be, this big root system that's connected to others, and then they would just kind of take off. So you're looking for approaches that will kill that whole plant, the underground portion as well. So for Tree of Heaven, there are a range of different options. If your trees are small and you can spray the leaves without contacting or impacting nearby desirable plants, you could use a foliar application where you're spraying the leaves. They can also be a good initial treatment on dense or extensive infestations. And there are a range of herbicides that are commonly used for this. In a forestry setting, glyphosate and triclopyr containing herbicides are going to be the ones that are going to be most recommended. And a surfactant could also be helpful with a foliar treatment. For Tree of Heaven, a very common approach, though, and something that when you're talking about slightly larger size trees, would be hack and squirt, where you are cutting into trees and applying a more concentrated herbicide directly to those cuts. So you can use it for trees that are, over an inch in diameter and larger, and have these downward angled cuts or hacks that are evenly around the circumference of the tree. And you can see someone spraying that herbicide solution into those cuts. And by intentionally leaving uncut tissue between those hacks, you can provide pathways for the herbicide that then move down into the root system of the tree and kill that root system. There are many different chemicals and formulations that would be effective for this. Again, glyphosate and triclopyr are commonly used because they're systemic, but they don't have a lot of soil activity. So you're unlikely to impact other trees that are nearby. And that would be the last thing you'd want to do. If you've got other valuable trees nearby, you don't want to impact them. Imazapyr and other herbicides are also used, although they might have more soil activity. So, you want to consider that. And I encourage you to always check the label and make sure that you're using the right herbicide for what you're trying to do in the location that you're working in. So here you can see someone with a hatchet making those cuts. And there's different ways to do this, but in general, a rule of thumb would be that for every 1 inch in diameter of the tree, you would make a cut there, a 1 cut per inch in diameter. And so if you have a 6-inch diameter tree, you'd make 6 cuts around it and squirt that herbicide into those. And this is something that typically is done in mid to late summer to maximize that herbicide's ability to travel to the roots of the tree as well. So it's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to kill that tree tomorrow, but over time with Tree of Heaven, you're going to have effective management of it. There are other approaches to things like basal bark herbicide application. This method lets you, again, target that tree you want to kill, but not the things around it. And you spray around the base of those trees. Tree of Heaven, especially when it's small, has really thin bark. So you would spray all around the base of those trees, 12 inches, 18 inches up onto the trunk, and go all the way around it with a tricopyr oil-based formulation that will enable that herbicide to penetrate through that bark and kill that tree. And for all of these approaches, you do really want to consider timing and time of year for the hack and squirt and the foliar and the basal bark. Your most effective time for doing this is going to be mid to late summer. So one thing you'll note, if you've done other management of invasive plants, an approach that's commonly used for many invasive bushes and shrubs and trees is cut stump. Not going to be something you want to do for Tree of Heaven. Why? Because you might kill that one individual shoot, but you're not going to kill everything that's connected to it through the root system as effectively. So this is typically something that people discourage for Tree of Heaven. While it might be great for honeysuckle and other things, not going to be as effective for Tree of Heaven. So after any initial management, make sure you're following up, making sure that the trees that you wanted to kill have died and that new seedlings aren't establishing. Check your woods for any new Tree of Heaven or something else that might pop up. You never know what's going to be the next thing to make an appearance. And with that, thanks for joining us today and learning a little bit more about Tree of Heaven. If you want to learn more, there's some great resources online, or reach out. As Alexandra mentioned, there's a lot of great folks here who are available to help.
Awesome. Love it, Ellen. It was a great job. One thing I did have a question on, though, if you have a lot of Tree of Heaven, evidently they're all connected. So should you find the biggest one and then do something to that so it would be connected to the rest? Or what's the best
I
option
would
there?
definitely do that, but I'd probably try to do as much as I can. As much as is practical. Yeah. How about you, Alexandra?
I would definitely agree with Ellen. It would be wonderful if there were that silver bullet approach, if we could just get one tree and it would eliminate the rest of them. But as Ellen alluded to, Tree of Heaven is a beast within itself. And even when you do that initial hack and squirt or basal bark spray, what have you, you're going to need to follow up because inevitably it's still going to resprout. So follow up is key.
I've heard several people say when you do that, it just makes it mad. So I was like, you definitely have to follow up from my understanding, and it's too bad that the spotted lanternfly isn't going to go through and wipe all these out like EAB did.
only.
Yeah. Too bad we don't get to
Love
pick and
that.
choose, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate you both being
Yes.
on.
Good
Good
stuff.
job from both of you. We always appreciate any kind of forest health tips that we can get from both of you.
Alexandra, always great to have you join too. It's extra fun to get to cross paths on From the Woods Today.
Exactly.
Good.
Awesome.
We'll have to think of some more opportunities.
Oh,
Oh, you know I will.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah, really appreciate that. Both our guests, Renee, they did such a good job.
They really did. Yeah. So I really appreciate all of everybody joining us. And we had an awesome show on forest health, learning different things. Unfortunately, we have that spotted lanternfly. We've heard about it for a long time. Dr. Crocker's been talking about look in your woods, and I'm like, uh-oh, now it might be in your woods.
I know. It's coming or here or, so.
Yes, exactly. So we greatly appreciate you. If you see anything, especially if you have spotted lanternfly or anything like that, shoot us an email at forestry.extension@uky.edu and we can ship that to Ellen and say, hey, Ellen, is this what we think it is? I know there's a lot of bugs that kind of look like it. So hopefully that's what you're finding. But if not, it'd be great to have Ellen and Alexandra on your side to know that that's what it is.
No doubt. We're fortunate to have both of them here in the state and appreciate the work they do for sure. But we appreciate you all being with us. We wouldn't do this show if it wasn't for you all. So let us know what we can do to help you taking care of your woods. Also, please help us grow this audience. You may know another person, a landowner, a friend, or somebody else who would appreciate knowing more about their forests and wildlife here in Kentucky and how to take care of them. Please help us spread the message by telling them about From the Woods Today.
Yep. And you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com and see all of our past episodes. And we have over 250 shows on there. So we greatly appreciate you joining us each and every week.
Indeed.
We'll see you all next week. Take
care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.